Welcome everyone to Enterprise.Expert. Today is November 22nd, 2017. And today's episode it's QQUBE plus Power BI for QuickBooks Desktop. Today's episode should be a treat as it's very different than the other things that we have covered. We're actually not going to talk too much about QuickBooks itself. We're actually going to talk about unlocking the power of QuickBooks Desktop data using two tools, QQUBE and Power BI. So we'll spend about 5 minutes just introducing the webinar series. I'll spend 15 minutes or so talking about QQUBE, and then I'll pass it over to Avi, our guest speaker, who will be talking about Power BI. He's an absolute Power BI expert, so he'll be discussing how we take this QuickBooks data through this tool called QQUBE and create amazing, awesome, like blow your mind type of reports in Power BI. So who is Enterprise.Expert? We're a community of experts that work in enterprise level technology. Mostly we gather in these monthly webinars, but we do have a Facebook group, a very active Facebook group. Just search for Enterprise Expert, and most of us are continuing the conversation or asking questions related to QuickBooks Enterprise and other enterprise level technologies like Power BI and QQUBE in that Facebook group. So I strongly suggest that you join that Facebook group and continue the conversation there. Now, the webinar series was created about a year and a half ago, and it's all about folks that are sort of dabbling in this space of moving upstream to the medium-sized type of companies, which have a distinctively different need than some of the smaller businesses, not just with software, but also with hardware. And a lot of us do sort of consulting work, so we have to be exposed to a lot of these technologies in order to be able to help our clients in this space succeed. So a webinar series typically is every third Wednesday of each month. This month was atypical, so it's actually the fourth Wednesday, but or is this the third Wednesday? I can't remember. But this was atypical because we were in a conference earlier, and these are non-CPE. We may have a special episode with sponsored or collaborated content, but pretty much you can count on these monthly webinars, and mostly about QuickBooks. They've all been about QuickBooks Enterprise. Starting next year, we're going to change gears a little bit and bring other technologies in as well. My name is Hector Garcia. I'm the CEO of Active CPA. We're an integrated technologies consulting firm out of Miami, Florida. There's my email if you have any questions, hector@garciacpa.com. So let's start with QQUBE. What is QQUBE? And if you don't mind, let me ask a quick polling question. It gives me an idea. Take a pulse of the audience in terms of, what is, have you ever worked with QQUBE in the past? Have you heard of it? Have you tried to use it? I'd just like to get an idea for where you guys stand, because that would help me to know how advanced or how light that should go in it. So yeah, so it looks like a great majority of you have never heard of it. And so thank you very much for tuning in. And some have heard of it but never used it. And there's 6% that have used it lightly. So great. So we're talking to pretty much all folks that are brand new into the QQUBE space. So let me just make just kind of a basic explanation, and then I'll show you with the demonstration. So QQUBE, it's hard to describe, but the way I understand it is it's a data warehousing system that creates a duplicate of your QuickBooks desktop database and reorganizes it in a way that it makes it easy for, I don't want to say anyone, but anyone with a notion of custom reporting that could use those fields in a meaningful way to create the reports outside of QuickBooks. So some of the systems often associated with building reports outside of QuickBooks are Microsoft Access, obviously Excel, SQL, Crystal reports, Crystals with a Y, I apologize for the misspelling, Tableau, and obviously Power BI, which is what we're going to showcase. So QQUBE is a tool that takes the QuickBooks data outside of QuickBooks and it displays it and organizes it in a meaningful way, hopefully so the user or creator of these custom reports can use that data, can pivot it, can group it, can make graphs with it, and so forth. Now, this is going to sound like a commercial for QQUBE, and I just have to explain the pricing because it's a tool that you have to purchase. QQube it's for one user, one company, $425. For 5 users, one company, $795. For 10 users, one company, $14.95. What I love about this is it's not a subscription, it's a one-time purchase. Now, with all three of these options, if you pay an extra $195, you get up to 3 companies, so you can run 3 companies in QQube. You can run reports independently, or you can also combine or consolidate it. And for $395 instead of the $195, you can manage up to 100 companies. So I'll just give you a quick example. A company that has 2 QQube users and manages 4 QuickBooks files would pay how much? So let's do the math. $795 plus $195, that would be $990. Okay, so that would be in a nutshell what that would cost. So let me just exit out of it real quick and go to their website just to show you how you have to buy it. And by the way, so if you're really turned off by the fact that you have to buy something for this webinar to be meaningful, I apologize. This is just how it is. All right, QuickBooks has some strong reporting capabilities, but QQube has really unlocked it. So I go to QQUBE.net. That's actually the best way to go to the website, and that takes you straight to the shopping cart, QQUBE.net. You click on QQube Technologies, and there's all the options. Most folks are going to start with the $425. That allows you to have one company, one user, but then you can build them as you go in the shopping cart. Okay, so that's as much as I will tell you about buying QQube. Now I want to go into my YouTube channel real quick and show you 2 crucial videos that you have to watch if you never ever built a custom report in your life. Okay, so let me go into my YouTube channel, just because if you happen to be stumbling upon this webinar and you've never seen any of my webinars before, you're going to have tough time kind of understanding where we're going with this. So if you are, you hit pause here. So if you are going to, so I'm going to type Hector Garcia CPA and do QuickBooks custom reports. So if you never built custom reports in QuickBooks, I recommend that you watch this webinar, the one that says building custom reports in QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, any of those will work, and we'll kind of explain to you the logic and the limitations that QuickBooks Desktop has in terms of report building. So I think that's going to be very crucial that you go through these videos. Again, if you never build a custom report. And the other one is I'm going to type the word commission. Okay. And if you actually do this video right here called using QuickBooks Desktop to build a sales commission report. So that would be like the second video you want to watch. This one shows you how to take the data from QuickBooks into Excel without any tools and using pivot tables to build a report. So if you've never done custom reports in QuickBooks or taken QuickBooks data into Excel, there's some of these webinars may be out of context for you. So I apologize for that, but that's just an important piece. So let's talk about QQube itself. So I'm going to jump straight into the software. So this is what the QQube tool looks like. It's basically a little window that sits there. It doesn't really do much by itself. This is where you pick, which QuickBooks files you're going to be connecting with. Whether you have the one company, the 3 companies, or up to the 100 companies, they will all be listed here, and it will tell you if the data is loaded or refreshed, because it does have to sync or duplicate. Then under available analytics, you're going to see all these options. So every one of these things that you see here, finance, operations, customers, every one of these things are the different areas that QQube has built for analytics. And if you click on any of these and you click on more info, it'll actually explain to you what type of data you can get from it. So you can start seeing all the type of data fields that you can often see in it. And it just kind of tells you what is in there. So it's actually a great resource for you to click on those. Now let me go straight into Excel and show you what this looks like in the real world once you have QQube connected, right? So once QQube is connected and your database is synced up, what you do is you're going to open up Excel, and what I'm showing you now, it's called the Excel add-in for QQube. So you can actually use QQube strictly for pivot tables, right? You actually don't have to do QQube for Crystal Reports or Power BI. QQube is by itself a great tool just to build pivot tables in Excel. I'm going to get rid of all these and just kind of show you how this works. Okay, so I'm going to build a report from scratch. So I just want to deconstruct this report and show you how it works. So this is QuickBooks data. Okay, this is coming from this QuickBooks file, QuickBooks data, and I want to build a report that maybe QuickBooks cannot do. For example, let's say I wanted a report that will show me the customers let's just tell you what the limitations of QuickBooks are. So let me go to Reports, Custom Reports, and click on Summary. And let's say, for example, that under columns, I wanted to have my months, and under rows, I wanted to have my customers. Let me just hit OK for a second. So this is like sort of the limitation. Let me do this fiscal year, and let me collapse it. So this is the limitation I have with QuickBooks. I can only pick one column, one row. I can't go multiple layers deep, and I'm also limited to what's in here. So I only have about 15 fields or so that I can use for columns and rows. So this is the closest thing to a pivot table we have in QuickBooks Desktop, but it is very, very limited. So I'm going to show you how we would construct a similar report in a QQUBE and what can we do beyond what QuickBooks can do. So what you see here in Excel, this is basically a standard pivot table I'm going to put together. Here where it says QQUBE add-in, these are all the fields that QQUBE unlocked from QuickBooks to make it available in this particular case in an Excel pivot table. And later on, when Abby jumps in, they'll make those fields available for Power BI. So I can come in here and look for customer, for example, and then I can look for customer name and look at all these things that I can pivot, and I can enable it. So I can say, look, I want to be using the customer name. So now that we have that unlocked, you're going to see it here on the right side. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my webcam to make it a little bit easier. So I come to the right side and I can say, okay, I want the company name, customer company name to be under rows. So I basically just click and drag that under rows, and there's all my customers' names. And that should mimic, kind of what we're seeing here. I mean, I haven't run any filters yet to tell it what kind of data I want, but that's what I'm doing. I'm putting the customers on the rows in this case. Let me go back to Excel. Okay, so there's my customer name, and then I'm gonna come up here and look for the date. So if the date is not here, we can pick it off from the left side, and we're gonna look for calendar. So right here it says calendar, and we're gonna do transaction date, and we're gonna look for transaction date, and we'll look for the month, and look at all these awesome things that we have. So I can go transaction date, number in month, turn that on. Actually, let me do month abbreviation. That would likely be better. So I'm going to turn that one on. Okay, and then that's now going to be enabled, and we can bring that and put that under columns. Okay, so now you start seeing that the pivot table starts getting constructed on the right side. Let me make this a little bit easier to read. Okay. All right, so then what do we want is the values, and this is just a regular pivot table, and we want sales information. So we're going to look for line sales amount, that will bring in the dollar amount, and we'll click and drag that down into values, and we'll start bringing this in. Okay, and you start seeing how the report starts being constructed. So these are the sales amounts by month. But what, so far this is something that QuickBooks can already do, where this gets a little bit more detailed in what I can do that QuickBooks can't, is, for example, I can grab information like, let's say, classes, and I can sub-pivot them under customers. So I can go here under class, and I can enable here, for example, class name, and I can click and drag that and bring that into, let's bring that class name, bring that under customer. And then now all of a sudden I have customer name, class, right? And I have all the numbers in there. Let me do, instead of month, because obviously not that much information, let me bring that up. And let me go to calendar, transaction date, and just do quarter. Quarter may be a little bit easier. So what we got here, let's do quarter number. Bring that under columns. Where are you? Transaction date, quarter number, there it is. Click under columns. And I'm also going to bring in the year, so transaction date, year number, turn that one on and bring that under filters. And then I can come up here in the left and I will select, okay, I only want to see 2017, for example. Okay, so now we're seeing the same information. Let me collapse this a little bit. So I'm saying the same information by customer, by class, by dollar amount based on the quarter, right? And so I'm just kind of showing you a very light version of the power that this has. But I mean, just strictly talking about pivot tables, you start seeing exactly how deep you can go. Now, there are some common questions that we get, and I'm going to answer them while we're here. One of it is, does this work with QuickBooks Pro, Premier, or only Enterprise? So I'm going to say it works with all versions of QuickBooks Desktop, Pro, Premier, and Enterprise. So all versions of QuickBooks Desktop. And then someone else says, in QuickBooks Enterprise, there's a free version of a tool called QODBC. And I want to point that out because I want to make sure that folks are not confused about the difference. QODBC. So I'm going to go to QODBC.com, I believe. So this tool here, it's available with QuickBooks Enterprise for free, and it's awesome. The problem is that none of the fields are pre-calculated and pre-organized for you. So you have to have an extensive knowledge of the QuickBooks database itself, and you have to have extensive knowledge of SQL query building, because you would have to make these calculations on your own. Like you would have to actually tell it to calculate two numbers or to rename them into something else for them to be meaningful. What QQUBE does is it gives you what you're seeing on the screen. It gives you very easy to understand labeling for these fields. That way you can get started on building this type of reports right away. Let me reset this whole thing here and show you sort of a different dimension of this. So I'm going to bring this whole thing back. And let's talk about, for example, items. And this is an area where people really want to do detailed reports on items. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look for my items field. So let's look for items. There we go. There's item. And then I'm going to go down to and pick item name. So let's go down and pick item name. There it is. It's already there. I'm going to grab item name and put that under rows. Okay, so there's all my item names. And then I'm going to do something pretty interesting. I'm going to bring in sales amount, but instead of sales amount, I'm going to bring the profit margin. So instead of just bringing the amount by itself, I'm going to bring the amount and the profit margin. So actually, I'll bring all three. So I'm going to bring amount, then I'll bring cost of goods sold amount, and I'll bring the profit margin. So now we're seeing sales amount, cost of goods sold, and profit margin. Now I'm also only gonna use item. Let me only use inventory items. So I'm gonna go to item type. There it is. Let me grab item type. Where are you? Item type. There it is. I'm gonna grab that into filters, and I'm gonna click on the drop-down menu and say, look, I only want to see inventory items, and hit OK. So now we essentially have a report that shows me all of my items, the sales amount, the cost of goods sold amount, and the profit margin. Now, where this gets super awesome is I can also do this at the invoice level. So let me come up here and go to transaction, a document number. Where are you? Give me a second.
Oh, the document attributes?
Yeah, document attribute. Hey, Avi, how are you? So there's document attributes. And I'm going to bring in my document number, which will be my invoice number. So that's document reference number. Okay, that one was already enabled. So I'm going to do document reference number, bring that in on top of item. So now I have every one of my invoices, the items in the invoices, the line amount, the cost of goods sold, and the profit. And I could even bring in the customer name if I wanted to. So I can bring the customer name, bring that above. And now I have my customer's name. Did I grab the right one? Let me just see because my screen is really small. Let me bring that back up. Where's my customer's company name? Okay, customer's name. Okay, so I'm gonna have my, down for a second. I don't know why the customer's name is not showing up. I haven't paid too much attention to that. Let me second. Okay, so I don't know why the customer's name is showing up blank. I would have to look into that. Let me take that out. Let me look at a different field. Let me try company name. Maybe company name will do it. No, company name won't do it. Let's go to document customer name, possibly. Document customer name.
I think that's in its own table, customer. And I was playing with this yesterday. It's obviously one of those sample databases. So I noticed the same thing. The company name was blank, but customer name.
Yeah, customer name. Yeah, so it has to be customer name. Okay. Yeah, customer name, bring that up. There it is. So there's my customer name, there's my invoice number, there's my item, there's the sales amount, cost of goods sold amount, and sales profit amounts. I mean, this stuff is just really, really powerful stuff. Let me see if there's any questions before I swing it over to Avi. So I wanted to kind of get your appetite wet on it, and of course, it's impossible to kind of understand it until you actually experience it. So I'm showing you one small dimension of QQube. I'm showing you the dimension in which I use it for pivot tables. Okay, this is actually what even the owner of QQube says. This is probably the most popular one, but in terms of it's potentially the least powerful one because pivot tables are great, but they're still semi-limited, especially on the graphical piece, on the graphical piece. So, Avi, are you ready for me to swing it over your way?
Yep, I am.
Okay, I didn't see any more questions. Okay, well, I'll ask this one real quick. One says, does this work with QuickBooks Online? The answer is no, absolutely no. Um, Tim Grant, who's an expert in this field, is saying, you build the reports. Does the customer need to contact us every time they need an updated report or a new one? So I would say, look, one of the great things about QQube for Excel is that Excel is a similarly transferable skill and it's not that difficult to teach. And as long as the customer knows that there is a sync feature where the data it's being synced and the sync happens every so often. Once the data is synced through QQube, so QQube creates this most updated duplicate whatever version of the database. And if they are on Excel and they kind of see here when the last sync was done, and they can actually click here and push the sync, so you can actually run the sync manually. So as long as there'll be a scheduled sync, but if the client knows that the sync is happening and this whole thing is set up for an auto refresh, notice that this has an auto refresh option here. As long as they know that there's a sync and a delay on the sync of an hour or so, whatever you set it for, and there's an auto refresh, technically, Tim, they shouldn't have to call you to create another report. Now, if they start moving things around on the pivot table and they don't know how pivot tables work, then I would say, yeah, they would likely have to call you again. And then he's asking a follow-up question is, should customers purchase QQube and build reports on their own? I think if they can learn pivot tables and they can have someone kind of walk them through it, I would say yes. But you could use QQube to create reports for your customers, assuming you're a consultant and just work that way. Or you can get your client into QQube themselves and have it build it on their own. I would say that would just be, that would just be up to you and how you work with your customer. But I would say, you're definitely going to have to train your customer in some basics if they want to tweak with it. I have a question from Leticia. It says, what about the date period? So sorry about that. I didn't show that piece. So under calendar, I can actually pick here transaction date, and I can actually pick a specific transaction date, or I can bring in transaction. Let me bring in under calendar, I'll bring in like the years, for example. So I'm going to go to calendar, transaction date, and select, let's say, year number. So that's already enabled in here. And I can come in here and do year number, bring it here onto filters, and then I can select, okay, I only want 2016, whatever that year happens to be. And then I can do year end date, bring that into the filters as well. So I can do year end date, bring that in there, right? And I can select, the actual year end date instead of selecting the actual year, or I can bring the date beginning or the date ending. So you can actually play with all these filters, and you can even do some slicers. And I'll allow Abby to show a slicer in Power BI, which is very similar than in pivot tables. But you can do slicers, so you can just click in them in a graphical way instead of using the standard pivot table tool. So Avi, let me swing it over to you and make sure you do. I'll do a quick intro of yourself, but then I'll allow you. I'm giving you presenter. I'll allow you to present.
Got it.
What your projects are and all that stuff. So Avi, it's quickly becoming a good friend of mine. My resource for Power BI has a great YouTube channel with tons of free resources, and also has a course, learnpowerbi.com, that you can enroll in it, and it takes couple of weeks, a couple of months, depending on how quick you work to learn it. But it's a great tool. I've been learning Power BI, obviously not at his level, and he's also has a book on Power Pivot and Power BI, which happens to be, I believe, the number one that still shows up in Amazon on the subject matter. Avi, I'll give you the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Hector. So hopefully you guys, everything's working now. Terrific. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, so check out learnpowerbi.com. And if you go there, that also links to my website. Quickly talk about QuickBooks and Power BI. And I'm new to QuickBooks. I'm learning as fast as I can. And of course, I have the best teacher in the world, Hector. But QuickBooks obviously is huge. It has its own big universe. But so is Power BI. Right? Power BI is pretty big, and I have worked over the past years. So my journey really quickly is that I was a big-time Excel user, was working at Microsoft as a business analyst, using Excel every day. Stumble onto Power BI, find out how insanely powerful it is, and then I left Microsoft to try to spread the word and tell as many people as I can the same message. So Power BI is its own universe, and they do overlap, and that's where we're going to focus today. But Power BI is its own universe. It's a universal tool which can help you solve data challenges. And to start with, you can connect and work with pretty much any data set: Excel, Access, SQL, QuickBooks, Dynamics, Salesforce, all of that. And the good news, it's free. So if you go to powerbi.com, so this is by Microsoft, so that's their website, powerbi.com. My site is learnpowerbi.com. If you go there, you can download Power BI Desktop for free. But now let's come back, and actually let's talk about this piece. Let's talk about this part right here. QuickBooks and Power BI intersect, my friends. So I have QQUBE installed just as Hector, and we're using the same sample file. And he showed you here that once you have QQUBE set up, QQUBE is somewhat agnostic of, let's say, the reporting tool or the visualization tool. It says, you know what, we'll let you use whatever you want to tool. We're a data warehouse. We're going to sync to QuickBooks. But then if you want to use Access or Excel or Power Pivot or Power BI, you're free to do so. But I have to say Power BI is one of the more exciting options there. But I want you to remember that it's not an either or choice. In fact, for a lot of finance teams that we work with, we would use multiple tools. We would have some reports in Power BI, kind of the high level executive reporting used in monthly meetings or something like that. And you will see a sample of that pretty soon. So that worked great in that scenario. But we also had Excel or Power Pivot reports, which is, pivot style. Everybody's used to it, and you can do a lot of things there. So it's not an either or choice. You can use both. So the advantage with QQUBE is, of course, that it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to, do a lot of the hard work. So it does the sync with QuickBooks, and not just that, not just a table sync. It creates those structures for you so that they're ready to use, as you already saw in Hector's demo. And in here, I'm going to start off as a starting point. I'm going to use one of their templates. Actually, this is where I typically start anyway. So I'm just going to use the payroll template. And this is out of the box. Let's see how this works. Did I have it open? let me see if I
Avi, and if you don't mind, while you open that up, I'm going to run a quick polling question. I want to get the
yeah,
polls of the folks in terms of, how much they know about Power BI. So I have a quick polling question just saying, have you ever
awesome.
used Power BI and kind of where you stand? So we'll leave the polling question up for another 30 seconds, Avi, and then I'll give it back to you.
Got it.
And I'll show you those results. So it looks like only about 2% of the folks here, and we have over 100 people logged in. Over one now it's 1% have actually used it in practice. So that's good. So that's good.
Hey, yeah, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let me go ahead and close the polling question and share the results just so you see them, Abby. So 58% never heard of it, and 25% only heard of its existence. So this should be fun.
Okay. All right.
I wish other people had their webcams on so we can see their eyes pop out.
Okay, great. So this is what opened, and this is out of the box in from QQube. All I did while we're waiting was hit refresh. So you hit refresh, and it connects. It's now connected to my data source, and you can see the refresh date right here, and it has a lot of cool things right out of the box. I mean, you can see some of the metrics are something you have to do a lot of heavy lifting to do, where you can see kind of shows this high level view, customers acquisition cost, average sales transactions, buying frequency, and so forth. So I'm just going to step you through the template. And again, it's a template. So if you look at this and like, that's not what I need, we'll talk about what you can do to build the reports exactly to how you need it. So sales analytics kind of shows you over the year how things have grown, cumulative, top 10 sales months. Let's look at some of the stuff. Buying pattern, 20 customers, top 20 customers. I had this last time. I know what that is. Let's look at new customers. This is pretty cool. So just showing you, hey, what's the rate of new customers coming in? And you can see that by month. You can see that by year. Sales items. So this is kind of a detailed report. Top 20 sales items, top 20 by margin percentage. Days between sales titles, so another report. But the last tab on this in the template is going to be, hey, create your own, right? You have full ability to create your own. So let's give that a shot. And I want to show you how easy it is, especially with QQube having done all the hard work. Now, the first time I opened Power BI desktop and I stare at this empty white space and I'm like, oh gosh, what is this? But they have built it with the Excel user in mind, so you would soon discover that it's not that different from Excel. In fact, if you look over here on the side, the field list is pretty similar to the pivot table field list. And we're going to start, and there are different elements here, visualization elements here, and some of the simplest are table and matrix. And I'm going to start with matrix because that's what comes closest to a pivot table. So I dropped a matrix here, and I'm just going to move it closer to the field list so we can see what's going on. Okay, great. So I have the matrix, and you can see I have rows, columns, and values. And again, this is similar to the list that Hector had as he was working through the values. So I'm just going to go to sales values first of all, and let's make it a little bit bigger. Line sales amount. So I have that number over there. Perfect.
And Avi, just make sure you zoom in before you drag them. Make sure you zoom in because your screen is really big. So just make sure you're zooming in or showing it just so we can see exactly what you're clicking, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm going to navigate to, let's say, calendar. And I'm going to pick the calendar year number from here. And I'm going to drag that to rows. So you can see that's a simple table. But at this point, you have a choice of visualization. So I'm just going to keep this table right here as a table. And I'm going to copy paste it. But at this point, I can choose from any visualization over here. So I can choose a pie chart, which would be kind of silly, I guess, but I can use a bar or a column chart. So simply you can select the visualization from that. You can select a line chart. So you have freedom of visualization. They have some pretty cool ones. Maybe I'll show a tree map. I like that one. So we'll keep that one there. And I'm going to copy paste again. And for this one, we're going to go to the item table and grab the item name. So I'm going to go here and grab the item name from right there. I'm going to drop it on my graph. And I'm going to change this to what's called a tree map, which is right here. All right, so that kind of looks cool, but it's a little busy. So we're going to filter this down to just the top 10. And for that, I can go over to the filter pane and I'm going to work on that. So item name, and I'll show you top 10. All right, so notice what I've done here. So this has multiple types of filtering. I'm using the top N filtering, saying show me top 10 by line sales amount, and then I'll just hit apply filter. And you can see it's a lot less busy. And of course, in here, we can add months. Let me just do that really quick. Month.
And while you do that, let me clarify something because I'm getting the same question like three different folks all back to back. So to clarify, what you're showing here, it's Power BI, Power BI only. What you're learning here, it's the free Microsoft tool called Power BI. QQUBE is the one that gives it the QuickBooks data. Just to clarify, it's two entirely different things. You can learn Power BI on your own without having to use QQUBE. You can use sample Excel data. You can use sample database data. Avi, I'm sure in your course you have sample data that you use, right? So folks don't have to go buy QQUBE in order to learn Power BI. As a matter of fact, if you want to learn Power BI, just don't get stuck saying, "Well, I don't need to buy QQUBE." QQUBE is
that's right.
Once you learn Power BI, that's how I get my QuickBooks data into Power BI. You can use it without QQUBE. Just want to make sure that we have that clarified.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah. So I talked about this at the beginning. Power BI is this whole new world, and of course, the scenario we're showing is where it's connected to QQUBE, but that's just one of many it can connect to. In fact, in this tool, I'll show you how if you launch Power BI, just like a new file, you would go to get data over here. So that's this button right here, and in this list, you can see there's a long list of things. So of course, a lot of clients I work with, they have data in SQL, Access, Excel, Dynamics, Salesforce, and the list goes on and on.
And before people freak out, because there's a QuickBooks logo there. Okay, so there's one that says QuickBooks Online. Go back to it for a second. So Power BI has a QuickBooks Online connector, which if you're trying to get data from QuickBooks Online, if you go up a little bit, you see right there. But it's in beta. So I actually have not found the person inside into it that's in charge of this. I can't find the person, and the beta was kind of done half. Let's just say half butt. So you could try it, you could test it, and get some QuickBooks Online data out of it. But I can't find any documentation or the one person in charge of getting that to work. So it's still kind of beta-ish, but you don't need an add-on for that. Power BI could get the data from QuickBooks Online directly without the need of an add-on. But if you're coming from QuickBooks Desktop, then you're gonna need, QQUBE.
Yeah, perfect. So thanks for that. So the part that I love about Power BI is, for one, it kind of feels modern. And you know what? I'll show you a finished report, and I'll talk about the scenarios where I love using Power BI. So this is what I was doing kind of last night, and this is built from exactly the field list, exactly the way you saw me building it. You just drag and drop, and then you choose the visualization. That's it. And I'm using really simple visualizations here. It does have some fancy ones. I showed you tree map. It's got funnel chart. Actually, let me show you one other thing. So besides the inbuilt visualizations that I talked about that are over on this corner, you can click a button there and say I want to import from store, kind of like an app store. And here you can see that this has a long list of things. You can see the scroll bar goes quite a way, and it's got lots of beautiful visualizations. So visualizations, you're never going to run out of them in here. But I'll talk about the scenario where I love using Power BI, which is it gives you a modern, fully interactive report or dashboard. So my favorite part is a lot of times when you're in a meeting and you're presenting something with a static report, gosh, God forbid, PDF or PowerPoint or something like that, and you're reviewing the numbers, but then somebody says, what about this? And that's an action item. So what about that? And that's an action item. Instead of that, Power BI gives you this interactive feel where every element is interactive. Every element you can kind of click to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is actually use the selection pane here to just kind of walk you through the story of how I built it and how I imagined this to work. So at the beginning, so all I'm doing, this is pre-built. I just hit those elements right here. So let's start with the top level numbers up here. So we can say, yep, this is 2017 report, and we can see the high level numbers. And yeah, wow, we did phenomenal compared to last year. But where is the growth coming from? So then maybe we show some trends and graphs. So here we can see kind of the year-over-year trend. So we can see, yeah, sales has done overall pretty good compared to last year. So the top line is the current year, the bottom line is the prior year. And here, this is the variance. So year-over-year variance, you can see pretty much every month we ended up favorable compared to last year. And here we can drill up as well, and you can see that a lot of growth came from Q4. Perfect. But now we can dig a little bit deeper and maybe look at it by item group. So if you're looking at the item group, you can see that a lot of item groups ended up positive compared to last year, but yeah, subs was negative. So there was something going on over there. And now the interactive part, which is you can click on, again, every element is interactive. So I can click on subs and everything filters just to subs. And you can see here that we kind of struggled in Q1, Q2, Q3, but Q4 is kind of making a comeback. So year over year was positive. So that's a little more information. You can also drill down into subs, and I just right click and drill down. And you can see the specific categories within that. And you can see that, yeah, carpet was, some of them were flat, but some of them were really negative, and painting really struggled, right? So this is the interactivity that I was talking about, where instead of every single question is an action item, you can kind of dive in and say, okay, let's find out what's going on, what's causing that. Let's go one level deeper. Let's see details within subs. So I'm going to, just unhide this table. And now if we click subs, we can see the customers that, that had those transactions either this year or last year. So I can sort it the way I want. I can see, hey, who were my top customers this year? Or I can say, well, who are the customers who had biggest drop from last year to this year? So we can see that we're not getting a lot of repeat business. I mean, a lot of customers bought last year, didn't buy this year, bought last year, didn't buy this year, or bought last year, but bought a very small quantity this year for that specific item group. And of course, from there, it's up to how you're building the report. In my simple scenario, I said, you know what, I'm going to put the customer information right there. So once we figure out that, let me try that again. There we go. That, hey, these are the top customers which had the biggest drops year over year. You can just click on them, see more information about them, and maybe you reach out or do something like that. But again, I want to emphasize the interactivity, which is kind of built in and lets you slice and dice within that dashboard and answer questions. Hector, what do you think?
I think it's good. Can you go to something? I'll send you a link on the chat.
Okay.
I put a link to everybody. Can you click on that link real quick? Because I'm getting some comments about, hey, do I have to get QQUBE? I mean, that sort of thing. So Avi and I did a video 3 weeks ago, 3 Wednesdays ago, on another webinar series called Excel Power Hour. So you can, I put it in the chat box, and I'm also going to put it on the email blast that I sent to everyone that attended and that's registered for this webinar anyway. So that video itself that we did, and it was like about an hour, we did this entire exercise without QQube. We did it by manually extracting data from QuickBooks to Excel using another tool called QB to Excel. And then we focus quite a bit on, so I use this tool, but it takes a long time. Like, it takes a long time, and you have to pre-build some of these relationships. What Avi's doing, where he's basically clicking and dragging fields, it requires QQ. So that's like the confusion that people have. Is like, you're showing me two things, and it's just too many things to know at once. QQube is something you don't really learn how to use. You just buy it, install it, and then use your analytics tool, which could be Excel pivot tables, it could be Power Pivot, or it could be Power BI. So that's just the stuff that I wanted um, to clarify. So I'm gonna put in the email blast a copy of this video, a copy of the video that just for QuickBooks custom reports, and then a copy of the different video where I do pivot tables from Excel data. So I will take you to the whole journey. Like, you kind of have to you have to understand QuickBooks' limitations for reports. You have to understand Excel pivot tables, limitations for reports with Excel data, and then, the fact that you will need QQube in order to go to Power BI, and then learn how to use Power BI to really appreciate this entire journey. So it's not a simple, journey, but I tell you, there probably isn't a more profitable type of engagement, consulting engagement, that than to give to the customer something that almost no consultant does, which is highly appealing, highly powerful, visually easy to use. And if the client gets a little bit of training on this, you can actually publish this to the web and give the client a web version of this that they can play with slicers and filters to change the information. So maybe, Avi, maybe show an example of a slicer and how
Yeah.
someone could simply, without having to go to the two complicated columns on the side, how can someone
Yeah.
easily, work with the report, manipulate what they're seeing?
Yeah, let's do that. So if you've seen slices in Excel, it works in a pretty similar manner. And hey, they're kick-ass. They're kick-ass in Excel and they're kick-ass here. So what we're going to do is go to our calendar table, and I'm going to grab the year slicer. Oh, well, the year field. So I just dragged and dropped it from my calendar table and put it here. But then I get to choose the visualization. And in here, one of them is the slicer. So I'm going to switch that to a slicer. And now you can see that I have this as a selection. So now I can say, yep, show me 2017. If I want to go back, I just click 2016. And you can add, this is up to you, what your requirements. You can add another slicer for months. So somebody can say, or quarters. You can say, I just want to see 2014 Q4. You can drag in by like item type or maybe some customer information, and you can add them on here.
So I have a question. If I'm using QQube on my side, okay, I have a copy of the database, and I create these reports. Can I send a user, a person that doesn't have either the QuickBooks database or QQube, can I send them a file like this that they can open and manipulate on their own?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, that's actually a great positive. So they would have to have Power BI Desktop installed, but this file is self-contained. And I'll show you over on this side, it has 3 tabs. We've been working on the reporting tab, but the next one is the data tab. And if you go there, you would see that it keeps a copy of the data. So this is a self-contained file, and you can just send them, and they can download Power BI Desktop, which is a free download, and it would be fully interactive. They would have all the functionality you would have.
But it would be limited to the data that was synced up to the moment that you worked in.
That's right. It wouldn't automatically sync. Now, of course, Power BI, again, it's its whole own platform which solves data challenges. That's the way I would put it. So it does have solutions for that as well, where you can publish a report online, you share it with them online, and that way you control the schedule of refresh. You can have it refreshed every day, and when they go access it online, and they have mobile apps as well. So if they want, they can access it on their tablet, phone, whatever they want. Then they're going to get the most recent version, always refreshed.
And Avi, can you show me what this will look like on a mobile app? I mean, do you have like
Yeah,
a mobile app preview mode?
I do, and I think it's easiest. So I'm online, so this is in a browser, and I'll show you not this one, but a different report. But they work on the same principle. So you can see this is a dashboard built out of that, and over here, instead of the web view, I can simulate a phone view. But of course, if you were on a phone, it would look like this, and it lays it out automatically. You don't have to worry about, oh, how is it going to look on phone? It kind of does all that for you in a pretty smart manner. Oh gosh, I can't hear Hector.
Yeah, sorry. So
Sorry.
to be able to publish like this, to like publish the reports online or in a phone view, then that's no longer the free version of Power BI, correct?
That's right. If you're sharing, it's paid. It's $10 per month. So yeah, so if you want to go online and share it, then that's paid. But you can, I would say a great starting point is just Power BI Desktop. Start off there. That one is free for you as well as your clients. Start off there, and then if you find value from it, then you can explore the paid version online.
Awesome. Let me run one last polling question.
Mhm.
And while the polling question pops up, Avi, I'm gonna read the last couple questions. There's a couple of really good questions. And Avi, I want you to tell us about your training program because you were gracious enough to give me access to it, and I'm actually going through it, and I think it's awesome. So I want people to know about that, the Power BI training program, not QQube or anything like that. Power BI program. So all right, so
Yeah,
I got almost I got a couple questions that I still need to ask you. So
yeah, go
somebody's
ahead.
asking about QuickBooks Online and Power BI. So Avi, I don't know if you're qualified to answer that, but so let me just give you a quick background. So the plugin that Power BI has that connects with QuickBooks Online data, it's not finished. It's in beta, and I think, and I don't want to, I'm kind of a QuickBooks insider, but in this particular case, I'm not. But I think that the person in charge probably doesn't work there anymore, and that's why it left sort of halfway. So it does require a programmer in the middle creating these connections because the data coming from QuickBooks is raw, and someone has to create the translated version of the data for it to be user friendly, kind of what QQube does. So the person in charge of doing the Power BI integration, that's kind of like the QQube equivalent in the QuickBooks Online world. I don't know who there is or where they are, nothing like that. So I have no clue, how to answer that properly. Now, the other question I have here is on the $10 a month, is that per user? So it's like if I'm sharing it with a customer, do I pay $10 for each customer that I share it with, or is it just unlimited customers? How does that work, Avi?
Yeah, that is $10 per user. So let's
Per
say
user.
if you have, so you would be paying $10 for yourself, for your own account, and on whoever you share it with, they would need to have a pro account as well. So they would have their own account. You log in using your email, saying, hey, here's my email login, and every person doing so and using shared reports is going to have to pay $10 per user per month.
Okay. And then so we're not gonna have time for this, but someone says, can I do a return on equity in Power BI? I would say in theory, yes, right? Because we'll basically divide net income by equity. So you have to create a measure,
Yeah.
which we don't have time for you to do measures, correct? But
Uh, no, but it's definitely possible. And Hector had the great suggestion. The other webinar we talked about Excel Power Hour, and he's going to send the link out to that. That does go a little bit deeper into Power BI, shows you measures which are pretty amazing functionality in Power BI. But
yeah.
there's a lot in there. It has a lot of capability.
So tell me about what's out there free, Avi. Let's start with free. What's out there free in terms of learning resources for Power
Yeah.
BI, and also obviously tell us about your premium stuff. So this is the time that you get to plug your stuff, and thank you for coming on the webinar, by the way.
Absolutely. So guys, yeah, I mean, I'm sure all of you, I would assume, work with QuickBooks, but it's likely that you also spend a lot of times working inside Excel, trying to straighten data together, whatever, wrestling with it, right? Data wrangler. I saw that on somebody's card and I found that so funny. So we all play that role. And so Power BI is a tool by Microsoft. So I love it for two aspects. It's a 21st century tool. That's what all the buzz around is. And the best part, why I like it, is that it works with Excel. So it doesn't try to displace Excel. It has a lot of scenarios where it works with that. So I came to it as an Excel user, and what it helped me do was smooth out all the rough edges, all the things that I was struggling in Excel, spaghetti of formulas, just not being able to clean data effectively. It sorts all that out for you and solves your data challenges. So it's certainly worth a look if you find yourself spending a lot of time just struggling with data in Excel. So as for starting out, I would say go to my site, learnpowerbi.com. And the best place to start would be this step-by-step training module. So that link is kind of right there, and you click on that, and it's going to give you access to my training module. It's 2 hours of video. It's got sample files and really breaks it down step by step and takes you through that. And that's really the best introduction you can have for Power BI. And this is written from a business user. This is written from the aspect of Excel user. So that's a great starting point. Then you can check out my YouTube channel, and the link is on my site, learnpowerbi.com. And there's a lot of content there. I also run a lot of live sessions. In fact, next week, we're running this 5-day challenge to build your first Power BI dashboard. I'm excited about that. So I'm going to be live for 5 days straight. And of course, there are tons of other videos and so forth. So you can subscribe to that. I do have a complete paid course, which goes in a lot more detail and provides a lot of support. It has its own private group, but the enrollment only opens a few times in a year. And what I do is I open enrollment, I recruit a class, and then I turn around and I can spend time just focusing on my class. So let's see if I can make it work.
Somebody's asking what platform do you use to run your class? It's not related to.
Yeah. Yeah, I use Thinkific. I know Hector uses Teachable. If you're really thinking about that, I would say the first thing to do is get started. Yeah, don't worry so much about the platform itself. Yeah, there are a couple of good ones. Teachable is great, which Hector uses. I am on Thinkific right here. So let me show you the course, and we have a Facebook group. Not quite. So again, if you're starting out, go to my site and get the free training module. And as it turns out, the training module is in fact the first module from my complete training course. So you can see here that I start off with Zero to Dashboard, which is the training module that I'm offering on my site for free. So you get that, and it's really cool, 2 hours of video. But then I go deeper into Query Engine, which really talks about cleaning, shaping, transforming data, combining from multiple sources, all of that. And Power BI is pretty incredible at that. Then it talks more about kind of tables and connecting them and relationships. And then DAX is the formula language, is extremely powerful. And yeah, so there's a lot to kind of a lot of value there. And finally, I talk about visualization and then the Power BI platform and such. So there's that, and the course has a ton of other things. We have a private Facebook group where we hang out, and it's got close to 100 folks out there. And yeah, so you get to hang out and ask questions, and of course I am there as well. I sometimes do Facebook Live in there as well. So that's one resource. And one thing which is unique about my program is that I also offer a weekly group coaching call, which is kind of like a go-to-meeting call. It's very interactive. Students can share their screen. They can show me the problem that they're struggling with, and I can kind of help them with that. So that's that's a terrific resource kind of inside the course. Again, so that's the course enrollment opens in December, but for now, just start off with the training module available for free. Get started there if you are interested in Power BI. And yeah, you can consider the paid course once the enrollment opens. And the key message again is that if you're struggling with data challenges and things like that, then Power BI is a great tool to add to your skill list.
Thank you so much, Javi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming in, and I also appreciate you having all those free resources out there. And hey, Power BI, it's a long learning curve. It will take you a few months probably to learn it, but it's going to be, I believe, an extremely powerful tool. And and Avi charges, I think, good money to do private consulting for building custom reports for folks, and folks pay for it super happily, because nothing like an enterprise type client that needs a report that used to take him 5 hours to do, now it takes him 5 minutes to do. They will pay top dollars for that type of service. Anyway, so thank you for being part of Enterprise.Expert. Again, join the Facebook group to continue the conversation. I'm going to invite Avi over to the Facebook group. So if there's any Power BI questions, he can answer them at least as much as his capacity. I'm also going to announce that Enterprise.Expert will be going to sleep until after April 15th, 2018. I'm working in a lot of projects and I'm sort of doing this on my own. And I'm going to dedicate this tax season to actually working on taxes for this time. But we will resume after tax season. If something comes up, and honestly, the only I will bring it back during tax season if we have something really majorly large to announce. If there's a major change to QuickBooks Enterprise or some awesome new add-on, or maybe some a sponsor of another sort of tool wants to do a showcase and wants to pay for that, I would bring that in, no problem. But for the time being, Enterprise.Expert will be to sleep until April 15th. But the other webinar series that I'm involved with, QB Power Hour, will stay alive. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, not tomorrow, on 11:30, which is, I believe, next Thursday after Thanksgiving, it should be. So 11:30, we'll be having an episode on progress invoicing and price rules for QuickBooks Online, brand new beta feature that just came out, and we'll have a guest speaker, Laura Redmond, to talk about Arrow workflow and what we learned in QB Connect last week. And today at 4 p.m. Eastern, I have another webinar called Small Business Power Hour, which is more about marketing, where I have a guest speaker who's an expert in Snapchat and Instagram. Sorry, completely different topic, nothing to do with Excel or pivot tables and all that stuff. So, so we'll be talking about Instagram, Snapchat as a marketing tool, and that's today at 4 p.m. So if you want to register for any other webinar that I'm involved with, it's hectorgarcia.com/webinars. Once again, thank you for attending. Join the Facebook group. Continue the conversation. Best way to reach me, it's email or Facebook, or reach the other Enterprise Expert community members. And that's it. Thank you very much. Go get QQube, go get Power BI. Have a happy Thanksgiving and have a wonderful rest of the day.